What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to be going through all 32 NFL teams and sorting them into a tier list based on how well I think their mascot would fare if they were in an all-out battle royale style absolute fight to the death. A little point of clarification before we get going. When I say mascot, I really just mean like the team name, not the guy that actually wears the costume and dances around on the sideline at the games. Like, for example, with the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not talking about KC Wolf. I'm talking about just the Chiefs. Okay, so I decided to break this down into 7 tiers because, I don't know, that's just kind of how it came out. So I'm going to start at tier number 7 and work my way up all the way to tier number 1, which would be the most deadly and dangerous mascot that you could face off against. And with tier 7, I don't think it's really that controversial. Most of these teams are pretty intuitive, and I think we can agree they belong at the bottom. Starting it off, we've got the Saints, which maybe they've got the power of prayer on their side or something. I don't know, but I think we can assume that they're probably pretty pacifistic and aren't really going to be that much help in a battle. Down here, I've also got the Chargers. I don't really know what a Charger is. I kind of interpret it as just a lightning bolt, I guess, which lightning bolts unpredictable. You never know where they're going to hit, and the odds of it hitting an enemy is pretty low. Maybe this is a Dodge Charger. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's one of these. I really don't know. But whatever it is, I'm not really that concerned about going to battle with it. Also in tier 7, I've got the Jets, which, I don't know, I guess this one's kind of open to interpretation. But the way I interpreted it, an inanimate airplane is not going to be that much help. I mean, maybe there's a fighter pilot in there, but I feel like that's really kind of changing it. I'm just looking at it as a jet. Don't think it's doing much. I've also got the Dolphins down here, which, believe me, I'm well aware that they could do some damage in the water. I'm a surfer. I see dolphins all the time, and I always think, wow, if they wanted to, they could mess me up. That being said, they're the only aquatic animal in the NFL, and we're just going to assume this fight takes place on land. So they're out of their element. Not really going to do much. Wrapping up tier 7, we've got the Browns, which honestly, I don't really know what to say about the Browns, but I think we can all agree that they deserve to be at the bottom of all this. Yeah, they're just the Browns. I don't know what that is, but they deserve to be at the bottom. Okay, moving up the ladder, let's look at tier 6. For the most part, this is going to be your bird tier, okay? We've got the Seahawks, we've got the Cardinals, we've got the Eagles, we've got the Falcons, we've got the Ravens. I've got all 5 birds in the same tier. And I know they're not probably all like the same. They're not all equal. Some of those are certainly a cardinal. This might be generous putting a cardinal in here, to be honest, because an eagle could mess up a cardinal bad, okay? So I'm not saying that they're all equal, but all kind of fall close enough together to be in the same tier. So really, tier 6 is kind of just the bird tier. I kind of found as I was doing this that really the tiers kind of ended up also being like different categories of mascots, if that makes sense. That'll make more sense as we keep going on. But I have the birds in here, but then I also added the Rams. And that'll make sense as I go, but a ram is really not that intimidating to me. Actually, when I was kind of getting ready for this, believe it or not, I actually did a little bit of research. And I found some videos on YouTube of a dude fighting rams or catching rams. I don't know what he was doing. He was doing something with the rams. And as soon as he grabbed the ram by the horns, like that was GG. Like the ram couldn't do anything basically. So you grab the horns with one hand and then haymakers with the other one. Ram doesn't stand a chance. I also just want to clarify that within each tier, the mascots are not ordered within the tier. Like there's no ranking within the tiers at this point. I just didn't go that like deep into detail. I wasn't that specific. Sorry. Because yeah, there definitely is a hierarchy of what birds are more deadly than other birds. But for the sake of this, they're all about in the same area and they're in tier 6. All I'm going to say is that if a saint is just out for a stroll, just walking around, having a good day, not paying attention to anything, but there's an eagle a couple 100 yards away with his eyes locked on him, and he's hell-bent on doing some damage, I think that saint is vulnerable, and he's not going to be able to fight back. That saint is swooping in. He's doing something. I think he probably aims for the eyes. That's the smart thing to do. That's what I would do if I was the Eagle. I don't know. I played Angry Birds. I remember when you got the Eagle thing, it was really overpowered. And then other than that, a lot of these birds, I mean, they're all kind of birds of prey. The Cardinals, I feel a little weird about being in the same tier as these other birds, but for the sake of keeping them together, I'm going to put them in there. Now, above tier 6, we've got tier 5. And like I said, the tiers kind of just ended up working out to be different categories of mascots that kind of fit together in a group because they're similar. So I think we can basically call tier 5 the tier of blue-collar working-class Americans. The mascots in this tier, they're hardworking and probably very physically fit based on their jobs, but they're also not like warriors by any means, and they're not trained for combat like some other mascots are. They're kind of just laborers for the most part, which means they're probably in really good shape, and that's why I think that realistically, any one of these guys would be able to handle a ram 9 times out of 10. And I also think that they're well equipped enough that they could defend themselves pretty well against a bird attack. First in this tier, we've got the Steelers, which I guess is like just steel factory workers, which admittedly, I don't really know that much about the production of steel, but I would assume it involves a factory and guys putting in work. So I think we can assume the Steelers are just able-bodied, well-equipped, competent guys, but they also don't necessarily have direct combat training, right? And then next up, I've got the Packers, which is sort of a similar thing. Like Steelers, I don't really know anything about the process by which cheese is made, but I would imagine that cheese packers are kind of similar situation. Blue-collar laborers just working. I don't know. Whatever it is, it sounds taxing and like it builds character. I don't know. And next up, we've got the 49ers, which of course are like gold miners or people that left wherever they came from to come out to California and look for gold. That's a hard job, lots of labor, lots of hard work. It's a similar thing. Next up, we've got the Texans, which is pretty broad for a mascot. That's just people from Texas, which with some people from Texas, there's a case that could be made that they're really towards the top in like the 2 or 3 tier. There's also a lot of people in Texas that maybe could get taken down by an eagle. Okay, so I don't know. There's a lot of variance there. I'm putting them somewhere in the middle, assuming they're somebody that maybe they work a ranch. I don't know what they do, but a similar type of deal as the Steelers, 49ers, Packers. Yeah, so that wraps up tier 5, which is just your hard-working guys. Moving along to tier 4, we've got our horses in there. We've got the Colts and we've got the Broncos. This is the tier that I would classify as very large animals that, while they're not necessarily predatorial, they could trample you and stomp on you pretty good. I actually had kind of a tough time deciding whether the horses should be above or below that tier 5 of kind of your hardworking Americans, blue-collar guys. Really just because I think sometimes a random guy could, in theory, take down a horse. I don't know what the strategy is. I'd imagine you go for the legs. But also the legs, bam, hoof to the noggin. You're out cold, okay? So I think if you get a gold miner or whatever it is, get a gold miner or a cheese packer, throw them out in just an open field and throw a Bronco out there. In this hypothetical, not only is it just like untamed and kind of wild, like, no, it's actually trying to kill you. I mean, those hoofs are deadly, and most of these guys, if they're unarmed, they're not going to be able to take down a horse, which, by the way, these are not just like pathetic little horses. The name Colts and Broncos, I feel like kind of implies that they're like really intense horses. I don't really know like the different classifications of horses that well, but in my mind, a Bronco and a Colt are like pretty intense horses, and if they really wanted to kill you, I think, and you're unarmed, it would be very difficult to fight back against that. Yeah, so we've got the Colts, we've got the Broncos in here, and then I'm also going to throw the Bills in this one, which is a little tricky because from what I understand, a bill is not a thing, but it's kind of slang for a buffalo, so we're just going to treat it as buffaloes. That would have been a cop out if I just did like dollar bills or something, because we all know it's the buffaloes. It's like the buffalo sort of, and I think that's sort of a similar thing as the horses. Obviously, they're not as mobile, but they are dense, they're heavy, and I think they could haul pretty well too. If there's a buffalo out there and you're trying to take it down, you go running at it, you get to it. What's your plan? What do you do? Like that is just a hunk of mass. Like I don't know how you attack it. So for that reason, I think as long as you're not armed, I don't think most everyday guys are going to be able to take down a whole buffalo by themselves, right? You're going to need weapons. So moving along to tier 3, lions, tigers, bears, oh my, right? Okay, so this tier it's all the predatorial animals, right? It's all your big cats. It's your bears, your tigers, your lions, stuff like that, okay? So I'm just going to name off what's in here and then kind of explain the thought process. Okay, so, well, actually, first, I'll go with just the cats. We've got panthers, we've got jaguars, we've got Bengal tigers, we've got lions. And so all of those big cats, realistically, a human is not going to be able to fight those. I think we can agree on that, unless you're well armed, once again. You're not going to be able to fight off a lion or a tiger or whatever. I think realistically, I've seen videos because apparently, I don't know, this video makes it sound like I watch a lot of videos of just like people fighting animals out in the wilderness. I don't. But, you know, the YouTube recommended sometimes wants to show me a hiker fighting a mountain lion. And of course, I'm going to click on that. So I think something smaller, like a bobcat, a puma, I don't know, even a mountain lion is pretty big. But some of those cats, I think humans could take, but none of these ones. A panther, a jaguar, a tiger, a lion, those are all like at the top of their food chain. They could take down a human. They could absolutely take down a buffalo. I'm pretty sure that lions are like the #1 natural predator of the buffalo anyways. I'm pretty sure. So they're above them on the food chain. And in a scenario where these other cats are there, I think it's a similar situation. I also think they could take down these horses, the Colt and the Bronco. I would say they'll probably go for the heels or something. I don't know, biting their legs. But I mean, they attack giraffes. So a horse is kind of similar, I guess. I don't know, it's lanky. Yeah, I think that actually is a closer fight than some people might think, just because horses aren't predators and these cats are, but I still think that the cats come out on top almost every single time. And then in addition to all the big cats, I've also got the bears in this tier, which I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say that it's like a grizzly bear, or it's some sort of, like, it's not just like a little sun bear. It's probably towards the more intimidating side of different species of bears. And I think that those obviously could kill a human and also a buffalo, and I think they could take on some horses pretty easily. And they're also just really dense, which makes it difficult for, I think, these horses to do too much damage to a bear. If this bear weighs, I've got no ballpark idea of how much they weigh, but they weigh a lot. They're real thick. And so I think if a horse gives them a hoof to the noggin or wherever else, which honestly hitting the head is going to be difficult, but I think they're going to be able to shrug that off pretty easily just because, I don't know, they're built. Okay, so we're getting close to the top of the list. Now it's time for tier 2. Okay, and now this tier, I think the best way to describe it is these are sort of armed militants or armed warriors. They are trained for combat, and also we can assume that they possess weapons. Okay, at least, yeah, I think that's true of all of them. And I'll start this off with the newest mascot in the NFL. I just want to say first, I'm glad that I didn't have to figure out how to sort an entire football team into here. Imagine your mascot being football team. I don't know, that's 53 men. Where do I put 53 men on here? I don't know, I think that's like an army almost. But anyways, I digress. Now they are the Commanders. So I've got the Commanders in this tier 2, which I don't know that we necessarily know for sure what type of commander they are, because there's been lots of different commanders throughout history. Like, did the Romans have commanders as a rank? I really don't know. But given that they're based out of Washington, D.C., I think we can reasonably assume that this is like a commander in the U.S. military. And therefore, they are trained in combat. They have gone through boot camp and years in the military. They are very well equipped to fight. They know how to use a gun. Next up, we've got the Vikings, absolutely ruthless. Honestly, when I'm picturing Vikings, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is what comes to mind, and those dudes are wild. I'm thinking probably carrying an axe or like a sword, something. Okay, so next up, we've got our two pirates. We've got the Raiders and we've got the Buccaneers. And obviously, their weaponry is not as advanced as today's weaponry. I think they're working with some probably kind of rough swords and some flintlocks. But at the same time, they go around stealing, pillaging just for fun. So I think we can assume that they're a force to be reckoned with. And also, I think that a flintlock, even though it's not a great gun. It's obviously like not an AR-15, but I think it's good enough to shoot a jaguar in the head, okay? To shoot a lion in the head, whatever it is, to shoot these, you get what I'm saying? And also having a sword, obviously for close quarter combats, I think you could fight off a panther with a good sword pretty easily. And also, Buccaneers, we know, are that kind of pirate, like Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm going to assume that Raiders are also that type of pirate, okay? I'm not going to cop out and be like, oh, they're like Somali pirates, so they're actually like,
I'm the captain now,
carry AK-47s. No, I'm going with the traditional sense of how pirates are portrayed because that's what's in the emblem. Okay, and this next one is a little tough. I don't know. I was unsure about it. I put it in tier 2, but I also think there's a strong case to be made that it could be all the way down in tier 5, 3 spots lower, along with the Texans, and because it could be interpreted very similar to the Texans, but I've got the Cowboys in tier 2 simply because I interpreted it based on, if I Google cowboy, the vast majority of the photos that come up, there's a revolver in the hand or on the side, okay? So I don't think I'm stretching it by interpreting it as though it's a John Wayne type of cowboy, okay? Lone Ranger type of cowboy. I think these are like old Western, Gunsmoke, Back to the Future 3 type of guys where if they've got beef with someone, they're like meeting them in the center of town, walking away from each other, turning their backs and trying to quick draw each other or something. Not to be confused with another interpretation of cowboy, which is like, I don't know, just like a hick that wears camo a lot and like lives on a farm, but lives a peaceful life. I think these are the more like badass version of that. Okay, carrying on, we've got the Chiefs, who a Native American chief from like back, this was probably the same time period that I'm thinking of the Cowboys from. Realistically, they're probably the weakest link in this tier 2, if we're assuming that we're dealing with like bow and arrow type things. Their weaponry is even less advanced than the Buccaneers or the Raiders, right? That being said, I think we can assume they're trained warriors, and they probably killed buffaloes to eat, so they're obviously going to be able to handle that. I also think they can handle the bears and the big cats most of the time. And carrying on, we've got the Patriots, which, based on the lore around the team, is a Revolutionary War soldier, okay? It's not just like a guy that's proud to be an American. I think it's somebody that fought in the Revolutionary War, okay? So somebody that's carrying a musket, which they're probably on about a similar level as these pirate guys, probably, I think. Not great weaponry, not very well advanced. That being said, they are a trained combatant, trained military guy. A musket, not great, but as long as you're accurate, as long as you make your first shot count, you should be able to handle most everything below you on the tier list, okay? And also, I'm hoping that the musket has a bayonet on it, which is going to help if your first shot isn't perfectly between the eyes of the bear. But yeah, the bear might be tough, but I think it's wraps for these other guys. Okay, so that wraps up the second tier and brings us to the final tier, the best tier of the most deadly mascots if they were all to square off in a battle royale fight to the death. Okay, and there's two teams in this tier And all I'm going to say is that I put them in the same tier for the sake of not having the 1 tier and 2 tier both just have one team in them. But one of these is very clearly more powerful than the other. Okay, so we've got the Giants in here, which there's multiple different interpretations of like how big a giant is. Jack and the Beanstalk, they're massive. The BFG, I think they're pretty massive. But then you've also got some other interpretations where they're like 10 feet. But I'm going with the Jack and the Beanstalk interpretation where they're as tall as a skyscraper and can palm a person in their hand. Regardless of what interpretation you go with, I think they belong above the 30 other mascots. I mean, yeah, the guys in tier 2, they've got weapons. They're trained militants, combatants. That being said, I don't think that matters that much if you're going against somebody that's exponentially bigger than you. So yeah, I think a giant is a pretty overpowered mascot and would win pretty handily against these other mascots. That being said, even the Giants are not nearly as powerful as the most powerful and deadly mascot in the NFL, the Titans, which is honestly like a pretty unfair mascot when you think about it. In Greek mythology, Titans gave birth to Zeus and Poseidon, Greek gods. I'm pretty sure in Greek mythology, they're like the most powerful beings ever, even though they got overthrown. So I guess they're not completely invincible, but you know who they got overthrown by? Like Zeus and stuff. Yeah, I've read Percy Jackson. I know the deal. I know the Titans are not to be messed with, okay? So yeah, honestly, I don't think I really need to explain that one at all. Just with a little snap of a finger or a flick of someone, I think they can very easily kill anything and everything on here. Now, it's also worth pointing out that this top tier, this tier 1, well, we could call it the mythological beings tier, which makes sense that the 2 most powerful mascots in the NFL are ones that don't actually exist, right? Which, I don't know. Personally, that feels like a cop-out to me to just, I don't know, like pick the most powerful mythological beings ever and be like, oh yeah, that's our mascot. I mean, it's pretty sick, and I think when they were doing it, they probably weren't doing it with the intention of being fair for some random guy to make a video on YouTube tier ranking the most deadly NFL teams by mascot. So I really can't fault whoever came up with the name Titans. They're the well-deserved winners of this big brawl, this big fight. It's not even close. I really don't think there's a case to be made for any other mascot being more powerful. So they're the very clear winner of all of this. But yeah, what do you think of the tier list? What do you think of these rankings? Which ones do you disagree with? Which ones do you think I hit the nail on the head? But yeah, as I was making this tier list, to be honest, I felt really confident about it. I was like, wow, I broke this down to a fine science. This makes complete sense. But then once I started saying it and kind of thinking about it more, I'm less confident with some of these than I was when I first came up with it. The tier 6 and tier 7, I don't know, there's just weird stuff going on down there. I feel bad putting the Dolphins in 7 because Dolphins are sick. However, I am extremely confident about my placement of the Browns, okay? That's as tier 7 as it gets. Thank y'all all for watching. If you're new around here or if you've just been holding out, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We've got a weekly podcast where we have all sorts of great guests on, and we've got some really cool stuff planned for the summer to kind of mix things up and get some new fun content coming at you, all right? So you're going to want to stick around.